I was around 5 or 6 when this happened, and although some things are a little hard to recall, please forgive me as I attempt to translate the memories of my child self, along with what my mother and sister have told me since the terror instilled in me from this ordeal still remains. Maybe this will prove to be therapeutic. This happened in 1990 and 1991. My mother suffers from bipolar disorder and did not like to take her medication because she felt cloudy and numb on it. She's originally from Thailand, and she always told me, "It's America that makes me crazy." She would often self-medicate with booze and cigarettes. She even kept a mason jar under the sink of something red that she made herself. No idea what it was, but it smelled awful and she called it Mommy's Kool-Aid. She told me that I was not to touch it, taste it, and definitely not tell my dad. And since I was the world's pickiest eater, who hardly ever saw my busy father, that was never a problem. My dad was in the military and he would often go on TDYs out of the country, so my older sister and I were left at home with our mother, who was for the most part perfectly capable of caring for us, but she had her bad days, as all parents must, complete with off-the-chart mood swings that fluctuated between laying on the couch all day to wanting to play hide-and-seek with us and chasing anyone that she found with a large kitchen knife. Typical childhood stuff. Sometimes she would go to Tampa for a few days to gamble or party with friends that she had made, most of them also from Thailand to the Philippines. They all seemed outgoing and loud, like my mom. I watched a lot of TV when I was little and just assumed that's how real life was or should be. And no one on TV acted like my mommy, so I just thought that she was a huge weirdo. I was always embarrassed at how people reacted to her because that's how my dad and sister acted, and being so young, I didn't have much compassion or understanding. I wanted her to be like a TV mom, and it didn't help that my dad was always berating her for acting crazy and that she had to be careful while he was gone and straighten up or the state's going to take our kids away. My dad looked down on her, and after a while I followed his example. I can't believe I did that, and I'm totally ashamed of myself, but I can only blame my youth and ignorance. One day I remember she was in a super good but super distracted mood. She was curling her hair, putting on lipstick, jewelry, and her perfume was in the air. Offhandedly, she informed us that she was going to Tampa. I was a little confused because my dad was still gone on TDY, and he wouldn't be back for another week, and we had school in the morning. She had never left us when those things were going on, and I had never had to get ready for school without my mom. Not ever. She even took me there on her bicycle because I could still fit into the toddler seat in the back. When she saw my panicked face, she reassured me that she just wanted to go see a friend who was having a birthday party and that she would be back in the morning to take me to school. My sister was 8 years older than me, and so she was for the most part competent enough to look after me. But I wasn't looking forward to being left with her because she often bullied me too. I suspect it was due to my mom's always favoring the baby, me at the time. And since I was super duper small for my age, that's how everybody treated me. I should mention that although she was a huge bully to me, my sister also had this tremendous and oftentimes irrational fear that since I was so small, I could easily be kidnapped, and she would always drill me with questions on the daily about how to deal with strangers and what to do if anyone ever tried to take me with them. She would even have mock drills where she would pretend to be a stranger by wearing this awful latex mask that I hated, and making me run while timing me with her stopwatch, and making me do it all over again if I was too slow, or tricking me and popping out of nowhere saying stuff like, "Congratulations, you just got kidnapped." It was ridiculous, and I hated feeling like I always had to watch my back. I learned later on in life she did this because she and my mom had to thwart 2 would-be kidnappers on 2 separate occasions. Anyway, my mom drove away to Tampa and my sister watched TV while I played with my pound puppies. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, no tricks and teasing. I didn't even give her any tood when she told me to go to bed. I always slept with my closet light on and my pound puppies. After positioning them all around my pillow, I settled into bed and fell asleep. I awoke suddenly because I was being shaken roughly awake by my sister, who was hissing my name through her gritted teeth. I was so confused. What time was it? Had it only been a few minutes or hours since I had come up to bed? My mom always woke me up for school, but I had a clock radio by my bed that read 6 something, and although my window shades were down, I could see traces of a soft blue pre-dawn. My sister pulled me out of bed and whispered furiously for me to get dressed. I was completely dismayed. Where was Mom? Why was my sister whispering? Why was she so mad? I would soon learn that she wasn't mad. She was terrified. She got down on her knees so that her face was about an inch away from mine and looked right into my eyes and whispered as calmly as she could. "There's a man sleeping on the couch. I'm going to take you downstairs and I want you to run through the backyard and go to Kathy's, a neighbor, and have her take you to school." Great. After a whole night of not being timed or having to run and hide in less than 15 seconds, she was at it again. I was a big fan of rolling my eyes at this age, so that's what I did. My sister gaped at me and I informed her loudly that I didn't believe her and I asked where Mom was. She covered my mouth and whispered that Mom wasn't home, and then she walked me over to the staircase, picked me up, and we slowly descended the stairs. I realized she was trying not to make the stairs creak, and I craned my neck around into the living room, and to my satisfaction, there wasn't anyone on the couch. I looked at her triumphantly like, "Yeah, right, who's in the couch?" But she shook her head and pointed down, where the family room was by the garage, and the half bath which was on a lower level of the first story, not a basement, just like down a hallway of 4 steps. After opening the door to this hallway, she put me down at the foot of these steps and motioned for me to go forward. We had thick curtains drawn in this room, and they were in orange, white, and brown floral print, so their outlines practically glowed as the sun came up behind them, and my eyes had adjusted. I made out a figure on our smaller couch, who was turned away from us, facing the couch back. At first glance, I thought it was my mother because of the long dark hair and tan skin, but the hair on the back of my neck prickled as I realized this person was all balled up and seemed crammed into the couch, meaning they were a lot taller than my mom. Their shoulders were broader, and they were wearing dirty sneakers and paint-stained jeans that were loose, like a man because, well, it was a man. I started shaking all over. This had never happened before, and my parents weren't here, and I had no idea what to do. My sister put her hand back over my mouth and ran me back up the stairs. She closed the door quietly and pushed the lock button on it. She had locked him down there, which made me feel a little bit better. I put a lot of trust into locked doors. My sister took me to the kitchen and gave me my book bag, but not my lunchbox. And as I was about to inform her of this, she opened the backyard porch door and gave me this solemn look, so I shut up. She told me to run as fast as I could, not to stop until I got there, and not to tell anyone about the man because she was going to take care of it. She helped me put on my backpack and then counted to 3, just like in all the drills she had made me do, and I took off. I dodged my dogs, I unlatched the chain-link gate, and I ran down the back walkway toward the driveway, across the front yard and off our property. I wasn't allowed to cross the street, but here I was, crossing it, flying across it even. I ran through other people's yards that were still wet with dew and didn't stop until I was knocking as hard as I could on Kathy's front door. Kathy opened the door in her bathrobe and her hair all messy, and I told her that she had to take me to school. That's all I said, and she gave me a look like, "Oh, do I now?" before letting me in. I sat in her kitchen as she offered me breakfast food that I wouldn't eat, and got her kids ready for daycare. I'm sure she asked me why she had to take me to school, but I can't really remember the conversation. I think I just told her that my mom wasn't home, then she just left it at that. Everyone in the neighborhood knew about my mom, mostly because she was always out in the yard, gardening and being super friendly. But they had all had to take care of my sister and I at some point, just like my mom would take care of their kids when they went out to run errands. This was the only time in my life I felt like neighbors were just automatic friends. I went to school and I didn't have a lunch, so the receptionist gave me a quarter to buy a PB&J and milk, which I didn't eat or drink but knew that I had to take so the school wouldn't look like they were taking care of me. Once I was talking with my friends, all recollection of the events that morning had faded from my mind. It wasn't until after school that I remembered everything, because I didn't see my mom's van waiting for me. I didn't see her on her bike or waving an umbrella at me. I didn't see Kathy or my sister or anyone that was there for me. I stood there looking and thinking that I could probably walk home, but I was terrified of having to do that simply because I never had, but more because I was always told that I wasn't supposed to. There was a boy in my class with white blonde hair who lived in my neighborhood, and he was staring at me. I felt uncomfortable and I turned away, trying to look like I belonged there and that everything was okay. But I caught the attention of his father, who had been helping his younger kids onto their bikes. "Honey, where's your mom?" he asked me. I didn't want to lie, but I also didn't want to confess that I didn't know. I didn't want them to know about all the weird stuff that was happening, because what if they told other people or my teacher or the police? I didn't want my mom to get into trouble, and I didn't want to get in trouble either. "And do you want to walk with us? She lives close, right?" he asked his son, who nodded. He made his son walk his bike and keep pace with me while he watched his younger kids. I think this kid asked me where my mom was, but I don't know what I told him or if I had told him anything, because I knew his dad was listening. I think I said that my sister was supposed to come get me, so the issue would be minimized to an irresponsible older sibling, and not all-out parental abandonment. I think children that are raised around the threat of impending instability are quick on their feet with responses like that, or they just play dumb. Once we got to my house, I ran up the driveway as the father watched, waiting to have responsibility relinquished. But I noticed with a sinking stomach that the garage was down, which meant my mom's van was not in it, which meant my mom was not there. I froze, fearing discovery, wondering if I could just wave goodbye and go to the backyard and sit in my playhouse, but almost as if by magic, I saw my sister turn in the driveway on her bicycle. The dad gave her a major disapproving side-eye and they talked a bit, and then he smiled at me and they all waved goodbye. She ran up to me and grabbed my hand, so I followed her up the walkway towards the stairs of our front porch, and we went into our house. I asked her if the man was still there and she said no. She told me after she saw that I made it to the neighbors, she went back down to the family room with the biggest knife that she could find. She kicked the cushions to wake this guy up and yelled, "Who the heck are you and what are you doing in my house?" And for him, seeing her towering above him with this knife and being super disoriented, probably hungover, screamed in bloody terror and cowered behind the pillows. "I'm a friend of your mom's," he told her. "She told me to look after you. I folded the clothes, I folded the clothes." My sister then pointed the knife at him and told him to get up slowly. She waved it at his face and told him to get out, which he was only too happy to do. He managed to unlock and pull open the sliding door in the family room, which we never used because it was too hard for anyone but my father to shut it all away. And she said that the dogs had jumped on him, trying to be friendly. Spaniels love everyone, the dummies. But he just thought that they were going to attack him, so he picked up the pace as he climbed over the chain link fence and disappeared. After locking everything up, or so she thought, my sister said the phone rang and it was our mother. She said Mom sounded drunk and asked her if we had met her friend, and my sister flipped out on her. Our mother could not understand why she was so upset and explained that she was driving a few friends home when they met a real-life Seminole walking down the road. So they pulled over and harassed him long enough to find out that he didn't have a place to stay that night. So being in a super good mood, and since she loves making new friends, my mom told him he could stay at her place, but he had to fold some laundry and watch her kids, so she could stay out and keep partying. and he agreed. She let him in through the garage and told him where to find the basket of laundry, which I do recall seeing neatly folded by the couch in the family room, and told him that there's some beer in the fridge but to not go up to the second story. My sister said that she said it like, well, I told him to not go upstairs, like that ensured our safety or something. I wish that I could end the story on a happy note, because that right there seems like a great place to end it. It's kind of light and funny even, but sadly no. That weekend, my sister asked to sleep over at a friend's and my mom let her. She always let us do stuff like that, and she was being extra nice to us. I guess because of what had happened earlier that week. She even told me that I could have somebody sleep over. So I called all my friends from best to worst around 8 to 9 p.m. and invited them to come sleep over. No notice at all is just how I rolled. And though I expected they would all jump at the chance, sadly one by one their parents all said no. I kept trying to come up with more girls in my class that I could call, until Mom told me that it was too late and past my bedtime, so I made my way up the stairs full of pouts. She asked if I wanted to sleep in her room and have a sleepover with her, but I just whined no, as mean as I could, and got ready for bed. All the energy that I was putting into being a huge brat must have been exhausting, because I fell asleep immediately. I woke with a start because my dogs were barking in the backyard. I remember that I opened my eyes and instantly felt strange. It was pitch black. That shouldn't be. My closet light was always on, always. Sometimes my dad would turn it off before he left for work early in the morning, but I always woke up and I turned it back on, even if the sun was almost up and I could see around in my room. When I was in bed, the closet light was on, period. Besides, it was not early in the morning this time and my dad was not home. I got super pissed. Who had turned out my light? I stared into the black until my eyes adjusted enough that I saw the darker black rectangle of my open bedroom door. I always left my door wide open, but in the dark, it looked like it was opening into a void, and anything or nothing was just through it. My anger faded and I started to shake. I decided to leave the safety of my covers, walk over to my closet and flip the switch back on. That would set everything right. I made my way over to the closet, felt around on the wall until I felt the switch and flipped it. Nothing happened. I flipped it off, then on again. Repeat, nothing. It was still dark. I noticed my clock radio wasn't on either, and the lamppost by our mailbox wasn't emitting any light through my window sheet either. My hopes sank as I came to the realization that the electricity was out. It wasn't storming, so it must be the breaker box. I knew that it was outside because sometimes I would run a bath, and the water would stay cold, so my dad would go out to the backyard to wherever the thing was and he would flip it for me. I instantly regretted not sleeping in my mom's room, and was deciding whether or not to be brave and feel my way down the hall to it. But I never had the chance to do this because suddenly I heard thumping, like somebody was trudging around downstairs. If it was Christmas Eve, I would have been stoked, but it wasn't, and I knew that it wasn't Santa. Maybe it was my mom trying to turn the electricity back on, but that seemed unlikely somehow. I backed away from my closet toward the foot of my bed where I kept all my big stuffed animals propped against it, and I sat on top of them until my weight had shifted them back and I sank into them. It felt safer having them all around me and only my head peeping through. I reached up to my bed and pulled the covers down so they hung over the edge, covering my head so I could just peek through. If you walked into my room, my bed would be in the far right corner, and the closet would be directly across from it on the same wall as the door. The door swung open to the right, so where I was, I couldn't see down the hallway anymore, but I could see through a crack of black by the hinges. I heard the trudging get louder until it was coming up the stairs. Once you get to the top, you could either go left to the bathroom, and to my parents' room, or right towards my sister's room or my room. I wondered where this person would go and noticed there was movement through the hinge crack coming toward my room, so I held my breath and closed my eyes tight. Whoever it was entered slowly, as if they weren't sure about their surroundings. I heard them stop and then move over to my bed. I smelled something like Mommy's Kool-Aid, and I heard them grab my pillow and then toss it toward the closet. I know because it hit me in the head and then tumbled to the floor. The pound puppies must still have gone flying because I heard the soft pit-pat of them landing around me, and after a pause that seemed to last forever, but it was probably more like 15 seconds, whoever it was walked out and went into my sister's room, shutting her door behind them. My first reaction was to run to my mom's room, but I was scared this person would soon discover the room was empty and come out quickly, so I got up and looked down the hallway. I heard something faintly down at the end, so I ducked down by my rocking chair. From this vantage point, I was able to see directly down the hallway, but I couldn't really see anything down it at all. It was all just a big black space. I always threw all my clothes on this rocking chair, so I got down low under where they draped and stared in front of me. I remember feeling the strain of my eyes dilating, not knowing that's what they were doing, as I watched the black rectangle of my doorway change ever so slightly. There was something darker, something moving towards me. It was close to the ground, and it sounded like a scurrying animal crawling on all fours, but I knew that it was deceptively small in its posture, and all I could do was stare in horror as it came closer and closer. This thing that was darker than the dark. I watched as it crawled over to my bed, and I heard it as it felt all over my sheets and covers. My teeth started chattering as I realized that it was searching for me. It started feeling around on the floor under the bed, touched my stuffed animals. As it got closer to me, I let out a small gasp. It stopped and it turned toward me. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my face, another on my shoulder, and someone was pulling me out from under the drapes of my clothing and pulling me against them and holding me. They were shaking too, and I realized that it was my mother. She knew her way around our house in the dark, and suddenly we were gliding down the stairs and out the front door into the cool night air, running across the yard in our PJs to our next door neighbors, who let us in and called the cops. My mom wouldn't let me go outside with her while she talked to the police, but told me later the guy, her friend who my sister had kicked out, had returned because he was furious at her for being unforgivably rude, and my mom, we felt, had cheated him out of their deal. He knew our dad was at home, and since our breaker box was located outside, he had managed to turn off our power, come back in through the sliding door my sister hadn't managed to lock, thinking that he would scare us and make my mom apologize or something. That's what my mom told us that the police had told her. She said that when they pulled him out and handcuffed him, he kept repeating, "But I folded the clothes." She still to this day tries to make it into a joke by imitating him while my sis and I cringe, although lately I found myself wanting to laugh with her. Maybe someday I will. I'm thankful that no one was hurt and that my dad installed a security system and got a breaker box lock, but unfortunately afterwards, he hospitalized my mom and told her that she had to take her medication every day, or that he would leave her in there. She agreed, but they ended up divorced 5 years later, and it took me my entire childhood before I could understand and forgive them. I'm still working on learning how to forgive myself, but I imagine a lot of people are in the same boat as me. Looking back on that time now, I'm just so relieved my sister wasn't home, because who knows what the heck that guy had planned.